Welcome to another edition of Tournament Style Problem Solving. I'll be your host for today, just like every other day. So, we gotta look at this guy and figure out what we're doing. This is you would boil this down to a bishops of opposite colors right on the edge of middle game to end game. So, one of the things that you may know about bishops of opposite colors is that, well, one side is strong on one color of squares, white has the light squares covered, black has the dark squared covered. So what happens is, this is the secret of bishops of opposite colors. Now, one of the famous grandmasters said that when he was attacking, it was like he had an extra attacking piece on that color, which of course is correct. My secret that I tell people is that I don't have the specific statistical breakdown, but just as an instructional number, I say 99% of your winning moves are going to happen on the color of your bishop. So for the lower ranked players, amateurs, that simplifies it, because we should be looking for moves, for example, that are moves that work on the dark squares. Rook to d6, for example. Okay, bishop to c5 check. Now that's not actually the move that's going to win this game, but those are the kind of moves. There are a few exceptions where you would move, say, for example, queen to c2, pivoting off of that one pawn that we have deep in his territory to give us some, very minuscule white square action. So we could use possibly the c2 square as a pivot. So we would move something like queen to c2, and then maybe we'd play bishop to d6, and then miraculously we're now threatening to checkmate on h2. All right. So it's much less likely to be the case, but it's just one of those things. You just keep it in the back of your mind. If you're, you got bishops of opposite colors, you're like, yeah, I don't know what to do. You're playing a tournament. You're like, oh man, what am I going to do? You're like, wait, you said you're going to win this on the color of the bishop. So that would help you possibly, break the mental block that you're having. So anyway, let's go through the system. We're going to look at checks, captures, piece contacts, board situation. Well, board situation of bishops of opposite colors, we've already got to it. Now also, one of the things we have potentially is that we're striking first, therefore we're going to initiate a kingside attack before he can respond. So let's look at the checks. We have what? Bishop c5 check, queen c5, b6, a7. All of those are checks. Also, we have queen to g3 check. And that's all. So captures, we have absolutely 0 captures. Isn't that awesome? Okay, stage 2 is done. Stage 3, piece contacts. Now piece contacts are moves like queen c2, bishop to d6. Rook to g8 is another one. That could be very useful, potentially as a, rook to g8 followed by, say, king to h8, discovered check. You have rook to b8, rook to d5, rook to d4, queen to e5, queen to f4, queen to, well, h2 is a check, but you get the general drift on that. Queen to a5, rook to a8, those are some trivial ones. Queen to c4. Pretty much that's just about everything. So Now, we look at this. Nothing super jumps out except queen to g3 check. Before I went through those moves, the first thing that jumped out at me was queen to a7 check, but I don't like it. When I went through the actual checks right here, queen to g3 check was like, oh geez, dude, this is a nasty move. So let's look at queen to g3 check. I mean, that one just looks super nasty when you combine that with a potential rook to c2. So we go queen to g3 check. He can only go h1 or f1, which is fantastic. So my philosophy on that is, well, if we were already hammering him hard with queen g3 check, let's go king f1, rook c2. What do you got? I mean, the first thing you have to look at is, are we able to dodge the checks that he's going to throw at us? The answer looks to be easily yes, because queen g3 check, king f1, I think h1 is probably just as bad, if not worse. So we're just going to go with king f1 is slightly better right now, just to give us something, a marker. So queen g3 check, king f1, rook c2. He's got, oh man, that's some nasty stuff. He's got queen to b7 check. But we can play king to f8. He's got nothing. He can only attack us on the white squares. He's got no black square helpers. So if we go that way, king f8 stomps queen b7. He has no more checks because our bishop guards the check squares that he would lay on us. That's fantastic. Queen b7 check, king into the corner. He goes queen to h7 mate. So that's why king f8. King g8 is also inferior. Well, yeah, that is inferior. Because again, he would just have a bishop check and we'd get annihilated. King f8 is the only move. So queen g3 check, king f1, rook c2. He could play rook to b7 check, which gives him the ability, a little more flexibility on his check. So we got to be careful. Again, king to f8 looks devastating because of our bishop guarding e7. We'd also have probable safety on king to h8. No, he'd go rook check. So you don't want to do that. Yeah, king to f8 again is just a killer move. I don't know, man. This guy looks dead to me. Queen g3 check, king f1, rook c2. Let's just say rook b7 check, king f8, and you're toast because now we're threatening to lay on him queen f2 check. He could play queen to e3 as a defensive move. However, bishop to c5, crunch. That skewers the queen and the king with the bishop. Queen g3 just looks like a devastating move. I can't see any reason not to play it. It looks like a winner. It is. It looks worse. Go with the plan. Rook c2. Use the pawn as the pivot. There he goes. That rook b7 check, like I told you he was going to do. Well, we can't go to h8. Rook checks. If we go to here, bishop checks. That's terrible. Or even worse, queen checks and then mate. So all we had was king f8, like we discussed. Game over, baby. So this is how you do it in tournaments. You're using the visualization skills that you have at whatever level. The point is we're trying to find the good moves, obviously, but we're also finding the good moves goes hand in hand with your visualization. So look, let's count the moves. Starting with queen g3, queen g3 check. All right, that's 1. This is 2. This is 3. This is 4. This is 5. This is 6. This is 7. Okay, this is a 7 mover. Now, objectively, it wasn't that difficult because just like in a tournament game, I went through all this stuff without touching a piece. There was no risk involved because if I found a bad move, like king to h8 was a bad move, I never played it. So I found the bad move, never played it, and played something better. Because in my mind, I'm using the visualization. See if you can visualize this with me. Queen g3 check. Now, I said king f1 is the better move. I think it was slightly better. But let's just go with what the computer played. Queen g3 check, king h1. Rook to c2, using that advanced pawn as a pivot to help us post him for the mating attack. Rook to b7 check, which I thought was better than queen b7. King to f8. And then the only thing he had was queen e7 check. Hey, you might forget that you have a bishop there because it's on the corner, on the edge of the board. Bishop takes queen, and game over. So you should be able to visualize this. This board is relatively open and not too difficult. There's no congestion. The knights will make it a little more difficult. So you just try to, in your mind, remember what you're doing here. Because your visualization and your ability to find moves work hand in hand. If one is better than the other, you won't get the same effect that you're seeing that I'm giving you. That is the key. We have to increase our piece, moves to increase our strength, but we need our visualization. This helps us, which you saw. Because I was doing the visualization of, queen g3 check, and I thought king f1 was his best move. But I discussed both of those moves, queen to b7 check and rook to b7 check, which is what you have to do in tournaments. You have to really be on your game and spot the opponent's moves. We're trying to find the good moves for the opponent. If he plays poor moves, like king h1 I thought was an inferior move, we'll beat those easy. So we want to find the best moves to counter our plan for the opponent, because if we can find his best moves and still beat those, you're good, which is what you saw here. So this is something you can do, but you have to work on it every day. So hopefully you enjoyed this. Remember to tell your friends about these problems and these lessons, but don't tell your enemies. They'll use my lessons against you. Like the video, comment, tell me what it did for you. Subscribe so you get more of them. You guys know what to do. I will talk to you later.